just got on YouTube. This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the debut album by hip-hop duo Ying twins. Basically, this project is called Walkin, and it came out in the spring of the year 2000. So the thing about this particular product here is just the initial fact that this crunk music as it initially was kind of starting off and kicking off just within some of those type pitches. Now, it probably was around back in like the late 90s, like 97, 99, when Lil Jon was initializing some of his couple albums. He actually had two albums out in the 90s as far as those first going to happen. But Ying twins was definitely one of the conduit type ones as well, one of the initial ones apart from Lil Jon and 3-6 Mafia in certain senses that kind of did crunk type music and got it initially kind of kicked off. Now, some good type stuff here. Mr. Collie Park was the hit producer. Mr. Collie Park was a pretty good clay maker for the Ying twins as far as this pitch can happen, is even on this particular first album. So some good type pitches kind of get that here, but it's a good type concept seeing the initial conduct of Ying twins, just because I haven't really listened to this particular album as much. I mean, pretty much the thing about Ying twins is the fact that they always had hits on each of their albums. Just the factoid behind it is they would always get at least a couple, and that's a pretty good pitch. Like the particular hit single that did some decent damage, off this album way back in the year 2000 was Whistle While You Twerk, which was a good type pitch for that. But I'm going to look up to see the charting appeal of this. Yeah, that Whistle While You Twerk was the song that hit the top 75 of the Billboard 100 back in the day and actually hit #1 on the top rap singles back in early 2000s as far as this pitch can happen. So some good type concepts kind of get that there. So yeah, it's just kind of the pitch as far as saying Ying twins have been around for quite some time within those particular type pitches. Initially, like I paid more attention back when I started to catch notice for when they started doing more hits. Like there was one that they did, like the Ay 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 song was one that particularly kind of had some of that appeal. And then there was also like obviously Salt Shaker, Get Low, some of those type ones that Ying twins did with Lil Jon like 2002, 2003. But some initial type pitches here on this particular type concept, just within the fair behind as far as those pitches kind of happen. So it's good type tones. This is a very minimalist type project. I like the concept here. It just seemed like some good kind of particular skeletal type crunk type music just within those pitches. It's the same thing with Lil Jon off of his 90s albums, just within the fair. Obviously, when you start off with albums by like My Brother and Me from like 2003, or Me and My Brother from 2003, there's two of those albums, one in 2003, one in 2004, but either one, My Brother and Me from 2003, and then also like Lil Jon's Put Your Hood Up from 2001, some of those type pitches as far as saying and stuff, that the initializing within these initial crunk artists was just pretty grand within the pitch. But this is a good album here. I just would say I like this kind of concept, just seeing some of these type contexts. It's the same thing when you pay attention to folks like UGK and Outkast and Scarface and Ghetto Boys, some of those type folks that initialize kind of southern hip-hop as far as those fairs going to happen. It's good here, but you do have to understand that they did flesh out their hits a lot better throughout the course of the 2000s. Ying twins lasted throughout the 2000s as far as those fairs going to happen, but this did get to the second single, so some good type of appeal for that, just being able to say just the concept of just off their particular hit album, just initializing some crunk type music and just being able to do it. But it's kind of, I feel like for folks, if you jump to this particular album, if you know Ying twins for like their hit albums, like the song they did with Mike Jones, which I forget what that song was called. Yeah, songs like Bad and Wait, the Whisper song, some of those type pitches. If you're starting from like 2005 Ying twins, they obviously had a little bit more just kind of, I don't want to say full-bound prehistoric, but just kind of more shows its age within the concept of like the initializing. But I think within the pitch behind it does have the appeal of just being able to do it. It's a good type concept compared to albums from like the 80s or pitches like that. This is pretty amalgamated within the pitch behind it. It's just kind of the concept that there wasn't really a ton of like crunk music there wasn't like a ton of crunk type music to kind of go by within some of those type fairs. So this is some initial type stuff. Weren't terribly many folks. I want to say that Ying twins actually broke onto the spotlight sooner than Lil Jon did, who was the king of crunk as far as those pitch can have. So it's just within the tone there, a good 1-2 punches to be able to get on here. Good excellent aspects. Pretty much like this album's not going to get a 10 out of 10 score, but it is going to get relatively pretty close to that within the appeal behind it, because this is probably one that this is like a highlighted one. This is a revolutionary type project. I mean, maybe not as full-bound revolutionary when you think of albums like, you know, obviously like Ready to Die or Reasonable Doubt, some of those type ones, or like the Enter the Wu-Tang album, some of those type pitches, or Me Against the World by Tupac, some of those type fairs. But for like southern hip-hop and for crunk type music especially, this is a pretty notified and crown jewel type gem to kind of get within those tones. So I just look after it. Just what I'd say, the lead single was Whistle While You Twerk, and this is, like I was saying, this is a song that hit like the top 75 and like the Billboard 100. So their first single that they dropped just had that particular type of feel. So some good type mixtures. Just like I was saying, Ying twins on each of their albums would usually get at least 2 or 3 singles just within the pitch. They always had that relative commercial appeal. I'd probably say that they could fill out a pretty good greatest hits album within the pitch, even if it doesn't have #1s. I'd say for the most part they have more hits that folks probably are going to know throughout like the course of the 2000s. They definitely lasted from 2000 to at least 2009 or so. So they have like a decade's worth of hits that particularly lasted with them. So some good type of appeal. But Whistle While You Twerk's the initial one. It's like a bounding kind of night venue hop to kind of get here. Just some initial crunk, like an initial crunk kind of debut single to kind of get within those pitches. Definitely some good dance noise and just a stark hitter kind of get within those contexts. So it's a good type concept here to be able to see that. It's kind of one like, it sounds like virtually like what an early 2000s kind of club junt would kind of think from folks as far as that particular pitch kind of went. This is kind of before like Eminem with like the real Slim Shady, some of those type fairs. So Eminem, when he was around back in 1999, some of those type pitches, he only really had like just My Name Is and Guilty Conscious to his name in terms of like club type songs. So it's just within the pitch as far as saying folks around that particular time. This is before 50 Cent for the most part. Folks like that, Exhibit hadn't really crested too full blown within the pitch. So it's just kind of the concept. This is before Ludacris within certain senses for the most part, it has to say. So it's just kind of concept as far as saying that a lot of this particular type fare. This is before Outkast with songs like Miss Jackson, before their commercial breakthrough. So it's just before a lot of particular things, but it just sounds like a pretty kind of, sounds like a factory kind of skeletal early 2000s kind of club joint to kind of get here. It should take a lot of folks back to like this particular time. It's pretty nostalgic type song, kind of get within those pitches. Good aspect kind of see here within the pitch behind it. Just some good crunk type music. It's one of those initial type ones. It's like, damn, this is a good type joint. Just did things pretty much ahead of a lot of things, like I was saying, that kind of were around that particular time. So it's just good fare for that. Just initial classic Southern hip hop and crunk type song kind of get here. Just a real staple for that. Ying in this thing is the second single. Now, the surprising thing about this is it has like some folks on here called the Hood Rats, who I want to say these particular folks don't sound like actual. It sounds like these are more children that are on this particular song. So I'd say full bound like that, but it's just kind of the concept that they sound. These Hood Rats sound a lot more youthful within the pitch behind for that particular fare. So this is kind of the pitch, but it's kind of within the pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. But it's just the aspect as far as saying that this is basically the similar type fashion. Both these songs, Whistle While You Twerk, is pretty similar to like Back That Ass Up by Juvenile. Some of those type pitches just within the tone behind it. Just would have to say, feels like a crunk fusion. Whistle While You Twerk and Ying in this twin. Whistle While You Twerk and Ying in this thing feel like crunk fusions between like a song like Back That Ass Up or some of those Manny Fresh type beats that you would have gotten out of 1998, 1999 with like a pitch like some crunk type music in there, which is just kind of rowdy kind of fuck that, kind of fuck that bitch, shut up ho, some of that type pitch just within the pitch behind it. But it's just kind of within the tone of like this particular one. Ying in this thing is just the same sort of fashion like I was saying as Whistle While You Twerk. Not this nice bravado filled kind of venue surfing to kind of get here, good buzz single to kind of have just to percolate, kind of dance slammer. I would definitely feel like about this one, just a Liddy type song. So just kind of the pitch as far as saying this does feel like more of a buzz single compared to Whistle While You Twerk. Whistle While You Twerk's definitely like the anchor type hit for this particular product, but this is like a good relative kind of 1-2 punch here. Just a little bit more bravado within a sense, a little bit more kind of feeling, kind of mighty within the pitch behind it. Just a good aspect, good posse song kind of get within this particular one. It's kind of a miniature kind of just like a bite-sized version like Whistle While You Twerk, I'd have to say within the concept, just a little bit more percolate compared to like a little bit more dance slamming type noise of Whistle While You Twerk. But just both these work for like the edge of what they are. There is another song that's like that on here as well. I'd say Back Up Move Away is another nice one. That probably could have been a pretty solid third single if they went for the pitch behind it, but I think they're just trying to get their foot in the door as far as this first going to happen. But it worked for what it was. So that happens to be the tone. So the thing about this particular album is just the fact that on Spotify it only lists 10 songs off this particular album. It removes 3 songs on here, and those 3 songs it removes would be Thug Walkin', the title track, The Dope Game, and then the song, and then the third song, Back Up, Move Away, I'd have to say. So the pitch behind that, out of the 13 songs in this particular project, I wound up recommending 9. So I'm not going to talk about 2 of these songs on here, so that narrows it down to 11. So basically there's the 2 songs that are also on the Spotify edition that they probably shouldn't have kept, were the 2 Whistle While You Twerk remixes, which are basically just the same song as the original Whistle While You Twerk, which is just better. So that just narrows it down to 11. So out of the 11 songs on here, I wound up recommending 9. So the only 2 songs I don't recommend off this project in terms of the normal type fashion. Now mind you, I would get the actual CD version or the MP3 version of this particular album that has all 13 songs. So I would say the 2 songs I don't recommend on here would be Dispose of Broads and then like The Dope Game, which basically The Dope Game is just kind of a clumsy, homely type song within the pitch behind it. It's a little bit more of a personal type one that just didn't nail the appeal. It's just kind of some in-between type fashions that just didn't nail it nearly as well. I feel like there's songs like The Warm-Up that just nail that particular vibe better, and Ballin' G's just had the particular aspect. I realize that this album is not as full-bound, just every song being like a club jump like Ying in this thing, and then Whistle While You Twerk with some good type fashions to kind of get some of these in-between type Dave moments on here for like some dredge, but the particular Dope Game just didn't nail it as well. As this more of like a kind of shiny type one that just didn't nail the appeal. And then Dispose of Broads was just kind of a pitch. This one was kind of like a royal type beat. It's kind of a more this kind of triumphant type song in like a royal type sense, but just didn't nail the appeal as far as this pitch kind of went. This was kind of the oddball, like the productions off this particular album. Just felt a little bit more royalized within the pitch behind it, but I just didn't see the concept as to how the ofteness of particular listening to that one. So it's just kind of the fare behind it. But just being able to say me recommending at least, well, actually I would say it's 8.5 songs out of 11 I recommend on here, because one of which, the Thug Walkin song, the title track, is kind of an almost song for me. But for the most part, 8.5 out of 11 on here. Just being able to say pretty much almost 9 out of 11. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10, I'd say, within the pitch, because I would say 9 out of 11 would be like a 9.5 out of 10 just within the fare as far as that particular kind of went. Definitely say 12 out of 13 would be, or 12, definitely would say 10 out of 11 would be like a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 11 would be like a 9.5, 9. Maybe it would get like a 9 out of 10. I would almost say either like a 9.25 out of 10 just within the fashion, more like a 9, but probably like a 9 out of 10. Actually, I'll say that this album gets a 9 out of 10 just within the pitch, because it's kind of a scant type album just within the pitch. I realize I do appreciate Thug Walkin, but it's just kind of one that was just more on the fence about within certain senses. So to talk about Thug Walkin, the Almost song, it's like an early 2000s kind of flex night at like a venue. I'd have to say here, just goes within this thing. I'd have to say Ying in this thing. I would definitely feel like just some usual night fare to definitely get here, and just a good fraternize with pals kind of joint to kind of get within those tones. It's kind of the pitch behind it. This is a relatively nice one for the most part. Just typical kind of noise kind of have within that sense. A little bit more kind of retro within a sense compared to at least for 2000 within the pitch behind it. This is one, has some good bravado about it. Just feels like a typical kind of Jeezy or like ATL kind of strip club John as far as those pitch kind of have with it. Just good type tone for some of that type fare. It feels like something with just that typical kind of flex and just kind of more brassy kind of bravado about it. But it's just within the pitch that it just feels, it's just not the most terrific production on here. It's a good production, but this is not the one that has like the most ambience in terms of like the most sonically pleasing. It's just kind of one that feels, it's more like, it feels more pedestrian within a relative touch sense. Just the one that has like the most kind of relative, it's one that feels like has like the most relative kind of learning curve about it. It has to within that particular time. If you're used to like songs by like Jeezy and USDA and folks like that, some of those type folks that would do like those kind of particular strip club numbers, folks like Blood Raw, some of those type folks within the pitch, just kind of within the fare behind it. But it's kind of a traditional type one within a sense. But it's an almost song, because I do appreciate the song, but it might be the one that almost gets a little bit grating within a sense. Not to say it's annoying, but just within concept, just kind of here and there. But it is a mostly good one. So some good songs on here like Ball and G's. It's like a syrupy and woozy kind of neighborhood drifting, kind of get within some of those type tones. Just a typical kind of glaze cruise around. I would definitely feel like here, just routine errands hop to kind of get within some of those type senses. Sort of song that Tupac or Tech 9 would kind of do around this, around those particular times, like the mid 90s and the early 2000s, as far as those fairs going to happen. Tech 9 in the 2000s. Tupac in like the 90s. It's a pitch behind. It's some extra time type fare, just picking up some groceries, goodies, pitches like that. Some of those type fares, that just errands getting run, bills paid. Some of those type fares just between it. Typical kind of Cadillac or hoopty type music, just to cruise around, get some standard errands type done just within the pitch as far as those fares going to happen. Ying versus Lil Jon and the East Side Boys is a nice one. It's like a good fusion of two initial Crunk heavyweights that had to say here, and just an initial blazer. So this one just has the relatively just kind of skeletal type fare about it. It's not as crazy as Lil Jon typically kind of gets. I think if they had done this song like 2002 or 2003, would have hit that much heavier. But it was just kind of a meeting, a crossing the paths of like two giants that definitely needed to, as far as those pitches kind of went along with it. Just kind of a concept of just like a basic kind of like more kind of cookie cutter, and just overall more Ying versus Lil Jon, the East Side Boys, is just kind of a cookie cutter and just more rough around the edges type club hop to kind of get within those tones. Definitely a dance pounder. Had like some relative shots for the year 2000 before Crunk had really fleshed in the year 2000 before Crunk had really fleshed out. It's a good type concept here, but it's not 2003, 2004 Lil Jon, and it's not 2003, 2004 Ying Twins. Just an initial type one to kind of get within that early sense of it. That's some good type concepts. Bring Your Ass Outdoors. Pretty nice one kind of get here. It's like a rowdy kind of basic in between hop noise kind of get within those contexts. It's vanilla kind of early 2000s initial Crunk to kind of get within that particular fare of it, and it's like a skeletal kind of heater. So this is just one. This just has like the relative kind of droopy kind of bass guitar type feel, something like Ball and G's, like the concept of like a single like Ying in this thing, or Whistle While You Twerk. Just kind of the concept of one of those ones that just feels like extra type noise, like some venue type fare and pitches like that. So it's just kind of one I would probably say just the initial kind of outdoor moments that just may be posted around a vehicle, just in like a parking lot, some of those type fares, just the concept of like neighborhood type noise, just in between errands, some of that type fare, but also like near a venue where this could be relative noise for just back and like some initial kind of socialized, just smoking in vehicles, some of those type pitches of just like the conduct of being around social type conducts within it. So it's just some good type fare for that, just some good summer type energy within those fares. The warm up is a nice one as well. It's like a scuzzy kind of murky neighborhood surfing to kind of get here. Just some after work shift kind of gas station run and snackage type runs to kind of have within some of those type fare. Definite good errands type music. So this is a better one. This is like a little bit more of like a murky type version, like Ball and G's. Do you like some of these cruise around? Do you like some of these cruise around type ones? Kind of get within those fashions. I'd have to say just the pitch behind it. This one's a little bit more traditional, like a makeshift type sense. This kind of one that just feels a little bit more like you just got done with work. Some of that particular type fare. So yeah, the warm up is just a little bit more of like a dark and dredgier type feel compared to like the song A, which is a pretty good pitch. So both these are kind of more cruise around type ones. The warm up's a little bit more evening fare. A is a little bit more typical day hop. So to talk about A, it's like a typical kind of day hop and bop kind of tune to kind of get within those pitches. Just pick up some drink, kind of vanilla outing and shenanigan. I would definitely feel like about this one. Just good cruise and post up type mode kind of be here just in the pitch behind it. Call up some homies, some pitches like that. Standard kind of vanilla hangout type fare, just in a summary type sense. This basic type fare for that. Kind of a good, kind of some good trailblaze kind of get within some of these aspects here as far as those pitches kind of have them with it. Just a good aspect for some of that type concept. It's basically like getting a southern fried version of Tupac as far as those pitches will kind of go to something like Thug Life or some of those type folks just within the pitch behind it. Or the Outlawz, definitely Tupac, the Outlawz. Just 4 years later in like a more southern fried and crunk type concept, and you'd have some of these cruise runs that just feel like glaze type afternoons. Just red eyes, gold eyes, pitches like that. Just have hell swishers, got a swisher in your ear, some of those type context. Wife beater, dicky type music within some of those type pitches. Just good type tones for that. Good concepts there. Then back up, move away. This is another quality one. Now this one goes with the singles. If you need like a 1, 2, 3 punch, if you like the bop and the ferociousness or the relative ferociousness of the singles for like the time that they were in, I'd say back up, move away is another quality one. Definitely worth scooping up. The actual album, not so much. I don't know if the new era album nowadays would probably only have 10 songs. I don't know why the Spotify edition only has 10 songs, but it's definitely worth getting the edition that has back up, move away, because it's another quality one here. It's like a brewing kind of typical night commotion, kind of get within those tones. This mid-pace kind of dance jam. I would definitely saying it goes with Whistle While You Twerk to definitely get within those pitches. So it's this kind of concept. So yeah, it's definitely good that there's some dance gems on here within that particular type pitch, because I do feel like this album, it does have like some good moments on here. There's definitely like some good summer fried type stuff that once again just feels like a southern fried version of Tupac and the Outlawz. Some of those type pitches just like that summer soldier kind of glaze as far as those pairs would kind of happen. It's just the aspect that in terms of like the dance noise, I feel like within certain senses some folks might label this album like a one hit or like a minor 2-hit wonder just in the pitches, that apart from like the energy of Whistle While You Twerk, there's not a ton of actual socialized kind of full-blown kind of noise. I feel like Bring Your Ass Outdoors, like a relative sense within some of that, and Ying versus Lil Jon and the East Side Boys kind of does it, but it's just the concept that a lot of these are more skeletal, relatively to say prehistoric just within pitch as far as that particular kind of goes, but it's just the aspect that Ying Twins definitely got better later. Not that this is a bad album, it's just kind of concept that this is more within the initial formation, some of that this was early, especially considering that music in the year 2000 before that was just different, within pitch. It was more shiny suit era, and Eminem was starting, and Dr. Dre was, doing new things with like Aftermath, some of those type pitches, so things were kind of within a different fold. Outkast, Ludacris, Scarface, some of those type folks weren't as commercialized as far as those full-blown things can have, so it's just within the pitch. But it's beyond say, so the album gets like a 9 out of 10, just would have to say. I would almost say I would almost give this album like a 9.25 out of 10 just because the trailblaze type concept that I particularly have. But I'm just going to say because 8.5 out of 11 is kind of somewhat here and there. It's not as full-bound like a full-blown kind of victory. So I'll just say 9 out of 10. The social score I'll probably give like an 8.5 out of 10. I look within the pitch behind it. It does have the gems on here, but it's just within the pitch enough to be able to say that you have to have a little bit more of like commonplace kind of rooting for like the concept, not to say like this, like you wouldn't want to root for Ying Twins, but it's just the concept as far as saying you have to kind of be forward in the motion of supporting the brand and pitches like that to be able to say, because it's not like obviously they have better hits that came out later as far as those pitches can happen, but it's just within the tone as far as saying that these are some ones that were just in an early formation, what was kind of going on with like a subgenre pitches like that. So it's just the tone. There weren't terribly many crunk songs before Whistle While You Twerk. Some of those type fares, Lil Jon in 97, 98, 99, and Ying in 2000, 2001. 2001, 2002. So it's just in the pitch as far as saying that. Definitely doing some good stuff, revolutionary type stuff. Just good classic here. I do feel like Whistle While You Twerk's a classic on a Crunk and Southern Hop type song. Definitely a great dance song. Should get things popping pretty quickly. So at least a few more gems like that just in the pitch. They do have the gems, but they're just kind of relatively more retro throwback in that sense. That's the tone. But 8.5 social. In terms of the future, like Ying Twins, not really as full bound sure what they've been up to in these recent times that I'd say. I know they at least dropped a mixtape in like 2012, and I want to say like D-Rock or Kane, whichever. I want to say D-Rock or Kane, one of those particular Ying Twins dropped a solo project not too long ago, like in 2023 or something like that. So they do have some relative type stuff just within the pitch behind it. I know they at least have albums up to like somewhere in like the mid 2010s. We'll have to see about some of these, but I am going to get to some more Ying Twins within some of those type fairs. But this is a virtual kind of almost arguable classic, definitely one that trend set for a lot of things. It's definitely worth checking out if you can just have the adaptedness of just paying attention that it is more retro.